We're like the nation, and North Carolina is in very difficult economic times. We have a wait list of at least 14,000 for our home delivered meals programs, for our in-home aid, for adult day services, for services vital to keeping people in the community. Now, these are people who the average age are near 80 years of age. We know about half of the folks we serve live alone. We know a number of them are in rural areas. This is a population that's very socially and economically needy. They're not typically eligible for Medicaid. If they were, they would be on the Medicaid services. So we're serving people who what we call sometimes is that near poor group, who have enough income, such that they're not eligible for some of the more available services through Medicaid, but don't have enough income to pay for those services themselves. And so what we're seeing is less and less actually ability to reach out and serve some of these people in the way that they need service. We're also seeing an increase in reports of, as I mentioned earlier, of abuse, neglect, and exploitation. And these are sometimes families who are so stressed with their own economic situation that they can't adequately respond. We're seeing the local providers, our senior centers, who are reducing the hours of operation. We're seeing meals routes, home delivered meals routes, who are getting shorter in some of the outlying areas. Some of our programs who are putting a cap on enrolling new persons into services, even if a person leaves the service. These are difficult times, which makes it even more important that we work smart and that we work well with as many partners as we can, whether those are public or private. I think it's a very admirable trait on a part of our today's cohort of seniors. Again, that silent generation, if you will, and who've done everything they can to not only help others and help the nation through the wars, but to, in a sense, try to be as self-reliant as possible. But there does come a time for every one of us that we need a helping hand. And I think it's important that we realize that we're not independent, we're really interdependent. That as a society, there will be times that we can help others and there will be times that we need help ourselves. And the unfortunate part of a lot of what we see in our adult protective services area particularly are reports of persons that it's called self-neglect. It's people, again, who are living alone, who because of physical frailty, sometimes because of cognitive impairment or dementia, sometimes because of depression, they've lost a loved one. Unfortunately, sometimes because of substance abuse, somebody who has maybe had lifelong alcohol problems or in late life has developed that as a crutch, if you will, find themselves in a predicament that they frankly can't get out of. And it is really up to all of us to sort of recognize those situations and reach out and make sure that we're reassuring those persons that it's all right to ask for information. It's all right to receive that assistance, those services, whether they're public or private. That these are things that they have not only paid for probably as taxpayers, but they also have helped others through their years realize the same sort of benefits. I think there's sometimes even in our churches, I've seen it from my own experience, that there's a reluctance to hear about some of the public programs or opportunities that are there, because there's a pride in the sense, well, we don't have that among our congregation, or we don't have those needs. And I've never believed that that's true. I think in any church of almost any size, we're going to have situations that people need helping hands, again, whether it's from the government or whether it's from each other. But more importantly, if the faith community can be also educated to the extent that they are a conduit or a portal for people within the community to not only come in for the spiritual side of it, but also to be a trusted place to learn about, again, services and opportunities. That's part of this interdependency that I think would make North Carolina special. Times like these where we've had the snowstorms and the ice storms caused me to have many sleepless nights, not only worrying about maybe a tree falling on my own house, but the situations of people across the state. Certainly we have people who are dependent on that one meal a day, and we're able to provide them, if we know enough in advance, with what we call shelf-stable meals so that we're keeping them. But more than that, it's just, again, be even further isolated and not knowing what their predicament is. There's a tremendous opportunity, I think, that the faith community has to work in the whole area of emergency preparedness, helping people understand what could happen in a hurricane or an ice storm. And this is true throughout the state. The flooding that took place in the western part of the state, it can happen anywhere. So that people would think about how we can actually, again, help one another. If a person doesn't have a family members in the area, even if they're under most Sundays you see them coming in to and from church and they look like they're doing fine, what happens if, in fact, if we get a major power outage for some number of days, is to be able to think about that as a church community or as a larger community. How are we going to respond to make sure that our friends, our neighbors, our parishioners, in fact, are prepared for that? Are they, do we do it through phone trees? Do we do it through some other call-in kind of a way, or do we do it through just visiting? I think it's vital. I was mentioning earlier that our one home delivered meal, for example, is required by federal law to be 1/3 of the minimum daily nutrition requirement. We've learned from some research we've done that for about half of the people we reach with that meal, it represents 1/2 of their food intake on any day. So what happens if they can't get that meal? We can't get that meal to them. What happens if we can't reach out through the transportation that we might normally do? What happens if that personal care aid that we would normally send out to that home, it can't get through the ice storm? Being prepared, being aware of our friends and neighbors, our fellow parishioners in an emergency situation, I think is a vital role that we can share, again, with the faith community. I think NCBAM is special, if not unique. I think it's a very important effort underway to try to build, if you will, a foundation across the state at the local level, at a grassroots level, to again raise people's awareness of the importance of this, to look up and see the emerging and aging population, and again how we can meet service needs at the local level, as well as take advantage of the opportunities in a positive way of this very growing natural resource that's very important to our state, the aging of our population, the older adults.